Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, March 30th, 2023. And our top story today, more than half of the world will be overweight or obese by 2035. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Professor Louise Barr. She's the president of the World Obesity Federation. Well, Louise, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you, Jeff. Great to be here.
Okay, some disturbing numbers that came out, a study that the World Obesity Federation did. 51% of the world, that's roughly 4 billion people, will be overweight or obese within the next 12 years. That's exceptionally disturbing, I have to say. I'm laughing, but I'm laughing out of shock, not comedy.
It is rather disturbing indeed. If you know the data, you realise they're based on reasonably conservative estimates of what is happening. If things don't change and if the ongoing trajectories keep on going, particularly in some of the large middle-income countries, then we will see more and more people in this world with overweight and obesity over the next decade or less. Of course, the issue isn't just a high-income country issue. It's become far more an issue of people living in middle-income countries. Think of the very large countries such as China, India, Indonesia, Pakistan, Brazil, and so on. These countries have growing numbers of people living with overweight and obesity, and I might add also with type 2 diabetes, which is related in part to the same the same causes. And it's this issue, it's not the high-income countries progressively getting more and more people with obesity. It's actually these middle-income countries in particular that are seeing the growth of this issue. And that's related to many changes in food systems, urbanisation, the way in which the physical activity environments in those countries have changed so dramatically over the past decade or two, and there doesn't look like it's going to be changing dramatically for the better in the next decade or two either, and that's the concern we have.
Yeah, well, and I want to unpack this a little bit more, but I also want to talk about the chronic disease element, because you talked about type 2 diabetes and all the things that happen that shortens your lifespan. It creates a lot more pressure on local healthcare systems. But let's talk about the why a little bit more. And these may be the less developed areas of the world, but is it the food that they're eating? Like, for example, did a McDonald's just show up somewhere in one of these countries and people are just eating the fast food? Or is it just the natural food supply not being sufficient in terms of nutrients and nutrient-dense food?
We have seen in many of the middle-income countries this change over the last few years from traditional food culture and food sources to far more of a Western, in inverted commas, diet, more fast food, more of the high sugar beverages that are actually marketed in a major way. We've seen the rise of food marketing directed towards children, young people and adults, and real changes in the food environment there. But we've also seen other aspects of urbanisation, more people in cars or on motorised transport, fewer people walking on streets, fewer people in bicycles, different ways in which people live their life now than a decade or two ago. And that's happened reasonably rapidly in many of these fast developing economies. And there are consequences of that. There are things that have happened to the good, but there are also things that have happened that have not been healthful or helpful for people. Yeah. And we see this in children as well as in adults and adolescents.
And you mentioned I don't know, is it lethargy? You talk about the technological advances, and now I think there's virtually internet in primarily most of the world. And if they don't have it by wire, they have it through satellite availability, et cetera. So people can telecommute. And I think we experienced a lot of this in the US, but is it just a lack of just wanting to get out and do a little bit of exercise, because studies show you don't need to do you don't need to be out for 8 hours lifting weights or sprinting around the block. You need to do some moderate exercise. So is it just people just being more lethargic and saying, hey, I don't even want to go anywhere. I'm just going to sit and game or do my work from home?
I don't think that there's been some sort of worldwide epidemic of slothfulness that has emerged on all of us over the last few years. Instead, we have responded just naturally to the rather pathological environment that has emerged. Now, there are good and bad things about technology. It's wonderful that we can access people, we can connect to people wherever we are. But that does mean we spend more time on screens. It does mean that many of our work, our everyday activity is now on screens in sedentary pursuits. Contrast that to a few decades ago. Think about children. Children then used to have to walk to see their mates. They'd meet in the park because it was fairly safe. There weren't as many cars going to and from the schools. They hung around. People walked to the railway station or the bus stop to get to work. Fewer people drove cars because there were fewer cars. So the normal activity didn't. The work that you did, more people were in more, not just manual labour, but in labour in work that actually required walking and doing things. Now we've got labour-saving devices. We just sit to do our work. There are fewer people doing that sort of heavy manual work. And so more and more, about a lot of our activity, and we lost active transport. We all stopped walking distances, or even maybe we walked to a closer bus stop, and we got into cars and we sat in order to commute. So a very different world from a few decades ago. And that was for children, and it was also for adults. And then we watched our green space go as we got more and more motorways and places like that. And then parents got concerned about their children walking to and from school because they were worried that they'd be run over by the parents driving their cars to school. So they put kids into the cars in order to drive them to school. And on it went. Our world became much more difficult to be just unconsciously active. And now, so it isn't that we're playing less sport, it's that our active transport and our incidental physical activity has really decreased. And that's to do with urban planning, our urban environments, and the changed way in which we move around. And we've also seen changes in our food environments.
Louise, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about world obesity and what can be done about it. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're joined this morning by Professor Louise Barr. She's the president of the World Obesity Federation. Louise, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Thank you, Jeff. Great to keep on speaking on this issue.
Yeah, this is a big one, and you know it's all over the world. It's not just in developing countries. It's also here in developed countries like the U.S. Louise, I want to ask you about the strains. You mentioned the type 2 diabetes. That's on the rise along with obesity. It's part and parcel with obesity. Let's talk about the strain on healthcare resources. And by the way, we just went through or coming through a pandemic where that strained a lot of our healthcare resources. This diabetes epidemic straining resources as well.
Interestingly, and maybe we all know this anyway, COVID-19 was very closely related in many ways to that of obesity. The people who had more severe COVID infection and the ones who ended up hospitalized and in intensive care and who were more likely to die from COVID included people with obesity. And there were a whole lot of reasons for that biologically. And so it was one of the many sad things about COVID-19 is that people who already had a health issue were actually put at much more of a risk because of COVID-19 infection. At the same time, because of the restrictions and other issues that happened around COVID-19, we saw a rise in prevalence of obesity in many countries, including the United States, as people lived under stress, as they were restricted in their movements, and as they weren't able to eat the normal sorts of foods that they may otherwise have done. So we saw a rise in prevalence of obesity at the same time. Really a perfect storm in many ways.
So let's talk about some solutions. And, I'm not sure what the solution is. Obviously, it's to try to get people moving. It's to try to get people to look at their nutritional content. But maybe it's to start with, hey, there are negatives to maybe current lifestyles, and there's some things you have to realize that you have to change. But how do you see it? I mean, how do we invoke change and get people to change their behavior?
I think of obesity as a physiological or biological response to what is a pathological environment. People don't choose to not be very active and to eat less well than they should. They eat and are active in response to the environment in which they live. And I think what we've seen is that it's a difficult world. The world in which so many kids, young people, adults live make it hard to be active and make it hard to make healthy food choices. So I'd like people to some extent, get angry about the world we've allowed to develop. Why is it hard for kids to be physically active after school in safe ways? Why is it hard for people to choose healthy, inexpensive foods that they can provide for their family? At the moment, the cheap food is the junk food, and in many environments, people don't feel that they can get out and about and move around easily because the world is not, their local environments are not designed to promote physical activity. I am a well-off doctor. I live in a green and leafy suburb. I can walk around even in the evening walking my dog and feel safe. Most people cannot feel that in other parts of my city. And I can afford to buy good quality food. Not everybody can do that. So there's an element at which we need to say, we need to make changes. We need to think, can we get healthy, affordable food to communities and groups of people who can least afford it? Can we look at the way in which our urban environments are planned and actually put in things like safe cycleways, street lighting? Can we make them more walkable? Are our public transport facilities affordable and go to places where people need to go? So there's a whole lot of issues like that. Can we deal with the issue of poverty and people finding it difficult to be able to get out and about? How do we do that? And then, of course, there is the role of personal responsibility, but I don't want it to make that the story. That's only part of the story. I think there are some things that people can do in a house. I'd really encourage people to think, what do we drink when we're thirsty at home? What about water? What's wrong with that? Why can't we put some in the fridge and just have that at the meal? Why do we have to have a whole lot of soda drinks around? Can we have just some ordinary plain breakfast? Can we have do we need to have lots of snacks? Those are all issues that we can think through. But all of that, why are people having lots of snacks? Why are people in that situation? And I'd say they're responding to heavy marketing directed towards them. They're probably in a world where that is the cheap and available food, and they're making those choices. So again, I come back, let us think about how we can actually make it easier for people to make those healthy choices. It would be lovely to say, please all move to a green and leafy suburb where there's beautiful parklands around you, and please all get a great job where you can have enough money to buy all the healthy food that you want. I wish that were the answer. I wish I had a magic wand to make that happen. But maybe we as a community can start to see that obesity to some extent relates to the fact that our world is not as healthy and well as it should be, and we make it hard for people to live healthy lives.
Yeah, well, you bring up a really important point about mental health and how that really can shape your response to stress factors, et cetera. Louise, we're going to have to leave it there. It's a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks so much for your perspective. And we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thank you, Jeff.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, somebody you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content, we'll visit our website, and of course, all of our streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN AM. You're not going to want to miss it. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe. Keep on saving. And don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the First Lifestyle and Wellness Network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives.
I'm a divorced single mom, and my ex-husband left me and the kids with a lot of unpaid bills, including unpaid taxes. I was really starting to show my stress on my kids because the IRS had sent me a letter demanding a huge payment from me. I couldn't afford it. So then the IRS was threatening to garnish my wages. I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. That would have put me over the edge financially.
It truly seemed hopeless, but then a friend at work told her to call the tax relief line.
The people at the tax relief line, they told me about something called innocent spouse relief. They worked it out so that all of the taxes from my ex are not my problem. I don't know how that works, and I don't care. All I care about is that I don't owe the IRS a dime, and they are not going to take my paycheck.
Even if it seems hopeless, you should call the number on your screen right now. There is absolutely no cost for the call or the consultation. You are under no obligation. If you are worried that the IRS could garnish your wages, seize your assets, even take your home, call us right now. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.